recorded live.
Hello, this is Vancouver. Welcome to GangStalking and Targeted Individuals. This show is being recorded, and anything said will go into the public domain. The public is entitled and encouraged to republish any part of this recording or all of it without permission, notification, or attribution. Today is Tuesday, March 1st, 2011. To find more of these audios, visit vancouverwati.com or TalkShoe and search for Vancouver or show number 87161. I've got a gentleman on the phone with me. And I started taking, he called into a number of the talk shows, and I started taking notes, and I thought, God, maybe someday I'll be lucky enough to have him call me. And I should have asked you this, but I know you as your first name and your handle. How do you want to be called, please?
John is fine.
Pardon me?
John is fine.
Jonathan, okay. And how are you doing tonight? And can you tell us when your targeting started, please?
It started roughly, I don't know for sure when the covert targeting started, but I was aware of the overt targeting roughly 8 or 9 months ago.
Okay, so 8 or 9 months ago, but you had said earlier on a call somewhere, maybe this one, that you think it might have even started in 2001, 10 years ago. What do you think?
Well, covertly, it could have started 20 years ago.
So what sorts of things, why do you say that? What sorts of things were happening back then in a nutshell?
Probably the most consistent thing would be like, usually I would have, my car would just, like something would happen with my car, and if it put me on the side of the road, there was always someone I conveniently knew that was either behind me or right there, and it would always be, an extreme coincidence. So just to give you an example, I drove a car to Atlanta when I relocated there from the western part of North Carolina. The car broke down. There was a tow truck behind me. By the luck of the draw, huh? That sort of thing. And what other sorts of things? I mean, before technology took off with cell phones and GPS, there were just little minor things. Just in terms of, outside of the car things, just people being in certain places and it being a huge coincidence, or seeing them over and over again. Huge coincidence. But
you think the advent of all this cell phone and all this technology, GPS and all that, you think that's increased the gang stalking?
I think that's why most of us are now aware of it. I think, to be quite honest, that is why most of us are aware of it. Because before, I know everybody has their theories about the implant technology, and I'm not denying that exists. Heck, I could have an implant, but what I'm saying is that I have distinctly noticed that, if a cell phone is with me, a computer is with me, any electronic device, or I'm in my vehicle, or even if I've, been on the internet and, basically put in where I intend on going, in those cases, I'm stalked. But other times,
it seems you stalk more heavily. Now you have
there's
one of the
always
things
somebody there that I observe that seems to take an unhealthy interest in, consistently, following me, or I can observe the obvious cars, in unison, one waiting at the top of the ramp, coming down the ramp while the other one exits.
Okay, now, and I'm going to jump around on this sheet because I've got a lot of bullets of things that that you said that have fascinated me. But one of the things is, you got a house or two and you can't sell them, and you've tried doing every trick in the book. They're stopping you from selling your houses. What's going on there, please?
And again, this is only theory and it's hearsay. I can't prove it because
you can never prove anything as a TI.
Yeah, they work within the law for the most part. They play dirty tricks.
But anyway, what's going on with the houses?
For 2 years, I've tried to do a short sale, and I'm on the 7th offer, and first 6 they all withdrew their offer. And so it's one of those things where Bank of America, they take a certain amount of time. The person who puts the offer on the house, they basically know that it's going to take a certain amount of time. The last 2 folks were investors, whereas the first 2 folks, the first 4 folks were not. Well, I can't remember if all of them, but I think, the first 4 were not investors. And so, I could justify those by saying, each one of them, found another cell or something like that. But it consistently happened with my second home, and this is the third short cell that's, that we're working on.
Just not working, and I'm going to keep jumping, and you said it's okay if I continue to interrupt. In fact, I have to, because you can rattle on forever, kind of like me. But another one of the bullets that I've written down over the few calls is somehow you think they have, and I've heard this from other people before, but they have an insurance policy on you. How do you know that? How would one know that they have an insurance policy on you? Why do you think that, please?
Well, probably the thing I have to note is that I think I probably said I've been required to have insurance policies by my company, and I personally got insurance policies in 2009 and 2003. And then, of course, I'm always generally, if I have a W-2 position with the company, a lot of the times if they have benefits, I'll have that in addition to my other insurance policies. So in 2009, I got an insurance policy, and then, of course, my mortgages, I had also marked insurance policies where, if you die or something happens to you, part of the mortgage is paid off. And I can't remember the percentages.
But that's one thing. What I'm hearing is that somehow people have the ability to take out an insurance policy on you without your knowledge. Do you think that's true?
Yeah. Well, technically yes and technically no. It depends. Stranger-owned life insurance policies, there's some legislation against some of them, but when it comes to mortgages or, employees and things of that nature, a lot of the times it's in the fine print that you do sign, so technically it becomes legal. And technically it's not stranger-owned at that point in the sense, it is stranger-owned in the sense that, they have, they're not a family member or friend or anything like that, but it's still stranger-owned. So this policy is, it's very common. Okay. For example, Walmart, they took this policy out on 75,000 on each of their employees. So, a lot of the times, that's not really a good thing because there's an incentive for fraud built into the system.
Okay, now I want to keep jumping around here, and I apologize to the listening audience for doing this, but there's so many bullets that I've got here. You made a comment that rose my eyebrows one time that you had thought about and you had planned for being homeless. Can you talk about that for a little bit and correct my misconception on that, please?
Well, one of the things I got to say consistently throughout my life, I've had, my adult working life, since 16 and 17 when I hit college. I've struggled financially and I've had to support myself. So, outside 16 years old, the only thing my parents gave me was, a roof over my head. They bought groceries, but clothing, haircuts, stuff like that, post 16, I usually got for myself. And same thing with college. So, I've always struggled to some degree financially, but one of the things I look back and notice was that it's always been somewhat consistent. And then, of course, when I stopped struggling financially and I started to build a little bit more in terms of oh, wow, I'm not paycheck to paycheck, again,
but as far as planning for being homeless, you're actually thinking maybe one day your four walls are going to be gone. You're going to be living out of your car. What do you think?
Well, what I'm thinking in terms of the homelessness is that, and the point that I was making with, financially struggling, everybody's, not everybody, but a lot of people are paycheck to paycheck. And so if you've worked as long as I've worked and as much as I've worked and you've been paycheck to paycheck as much as I've been, you know that for you, the job is everything because you don't really have a lot of savings and things of that nature. So what happens is, for me, when I realized that my reputation had suffered and technology was available to possibly keep me from receiving emails or my calls getting intercepted, I just thought the possibility of being homeless is very, very, likely.
A possibility,
It's a high possibility. So, from my perspective, that's why I felt like it was important for me to just understand, if,
And jumping right along to another one here. Another one, you made the comment one time, you can see in the eyes of the perps that they don't want to participate. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Not all. I said I can see in some of them that, it seems like they are in a forced situation or in a situation where they don't really truly want to participate. It's almost like I've got to. And it's from those perps that I've kind of received some messages like as to why I'm being targeted. So.
And what are they telling you? What do you mean some messages? What are they saying? What more on that, please?
Some of them will say, and I can think of just the specific examples in terms of the people and things of that nature. One person said, it's because you have no responsibilities. Another person mentioned something about my lack of relationships and things of that nature. And then another person, and then there are the other ones that kind of give insinuations, but that's more street theater.
But are you saying you actually have carried on conversations with perps? Is that something you initiated, or did they, or how did this conversation come about?
I've dated perps. I mean, I've.
Okay, and we should point out that you tell about your
and that term
sexual
perp,
preferences. I'll let you say it yourself there, since.
Yeah, I'm gay. I'm not ashamed of it.
Okay.
Gay. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. African American and gay.
Okay, and so but you've seen it in their eyes, and you've actually dated perps. How about a little more on that, on the aspect of that, please?
Well, as far as like when I say seen it in the eyes, it's just the expression of like, I feel sorry for what you're going through, or a situation where it's like, okay, they went extreme, meaning referring to another perp who did XYZ. In terms of like one time I was in a place and one TI pushed me. I mean not TI, but perp pushed me, and the perp that was standing next to me basically said, now that's a real push. That was a bit much. And so anyway, I was just like, yeah. So, I mean, it's been that type of situation. But then there are the other times where it's like, damn it, I got to be here. And, you could just look at the exhaustion almost in their eyes, like that they, But I probably have to say the majority of the people seem a little bit giddy about doing what they're doing.
You mean they like it? They like being perps?
Yeah, to me it seems like I'd say 80% of them seem like, they're giddy about it in terms of being able to socialize with who they're interacting with while they're taunting or harassing you.
Wow.
But, and some seem just generally neutral and, need to swarm you or mob you or whatever, or stand in your space. But then, there are, that small percentage, 1 to 5% who are just kind of like, you can see some level of empathy.
And now, you made a statement earlier that made me raise my eyebrows, that you thought that perhaps a higher percentage of gays are perps or TI perps. What do you think on that? Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Well, let me throw in the disclaimer since this is being recorded.
Sure.
Because I'm African American and because I'm gay, my assumption is if you're being targeted, that you're going to be sent what your demographic is. So if you are, like for me, if you work in a predominantly like white environment, the people there will be white. But if your social circle includes, your family, African American, or when you go to nightclubs, it's predominantly African American, then that's what your perps are going to be that to some degree. And then, of course, same thing goes for gay. But the reason why I point out gay is because it's somewhat consistent because, I go to straight clubs, I go to gay clubs, and somehow, some way, it just seems like the perping starts with the gay person. But again, it could be a strategy. I don't understand the logic, but like, I went to a straight club the other night and, this gay guy came up and like grabbed my face or something. It was weird. And I tried to be friendly because, I'm not, as long as someone is friendly with whatever they do, if they're drunk or whatever, I don't mind. But then after that, I started getting heavily, inundated with, people being rude, invading my space, things of that nature.
Hey, one time you made the comment that you think some perps get paid and some not. How would you know that, and how do you find out? How would you find that out, and what do you have to say about that topic in general?
That some get paid? Well, there's the philosophical part of it, and then there's just, for me, the overall logic. like the logic is, I think that many quote unquote perps, and again I'm using that term loosely because I would probably more say civilian spies or harassers, but they basically I think are a part of a network that's just in place to for civilian protection, and I think that there's this tactic of harassing certain individuals is basically to neutralize them or to discredit them by making them seem crazy or, become crazy, and or to basically, commit some type of act that, correlates to a political or ideological type of need or self-interest. Like a corporation might want someone to, do something, break into someone's house and have that on the news, so, people start buying security alarms. Self-interest, I think, rules a lot of this.
That kind of leads into a topic that you have made a statement that totally wowed me, and that was that New York City has a lot of perps. That it's rampant back there. But you don't live there now. What's been the difference between New York and where you're at now?
A couple of things. One, New York is really the only true walking city of its mass. Of its size in the United States. You have parts of different cities where you can walk downtown or whatever. But I'm just saying, New York, you really don't need the car there compared to other cities. And what I notice is that I guess I'm by foot, so a lot of the times it's probably easier to notice because you have a lot of people walking by foot. And I didn't drive, but even when I was the first time I drove to New York, I can remember it felt like, perps were around me. But in New York, it's hard to tell when you're driving because it's just a crowded city in general.
Yeah, but when you're on foot in New York, how does that differ? Are you in a popular? I'm not asking what town you're in. Excuse me. Are you in a populated town or a sleepy town, or what's the difference between the two?
Where I'm at now is moderately sized. It's 1 million or so folks here. And, the difference is, in New York, it's just more people. So it's one of those things where the tactics are a little more extreme in terms of on foot. And, when I've gone to other cities, it's more, driving when they basically riding your blind spot purposely, or ride, basically slowing down when you slow down, in your blind spot, just to let you know that they're watching you. But when I'm walking in Charlotte, for the most part, they don't do the extremely rude stuff. But you gotta keep in mind, from my perspective, my awakening only happened about 8 or 9 months ago. And when I say awakening, meaning they overtly let me know what was going on by extreme tactics.
So you may have been gang stalked for 10, maybe 20 years, but you just learned the term 8 months ago.
Correct. Well, the term, yeah, but more so the tactics got even more extreme 8 months ago. Because it got to a point where people literally, I would go to a place and people would be pushing me. And I would just be like, what the hell? And so I started fighting back.
For no reason. Or is that because you fought back and didn't take it sitting down, or is it because I haven't heard that tactic used too much, but what do you say?
Are you serious? The pushing?
No, I've heard I had a lot of crowding, but shoving and pushing, I have not much.
No, not shoving. Like, there's a difference, because what would happen for me is
sure.
When I say push, like the example that I used in particular, and this happened a lot. Let's say if I went to a bar. Now, bars are crowded and people bump into people, but there are times when, there's space there for someone to get through, and then they come and they accidentally fall up against you. The first time, understandable, but when 5 people come and accidentally fall into you, that's very obvious and overt. And so it's just one of those things where, that to me is a distinction. And then when I'm walking in New York, another thing is, again, it's more crowded, but people would cut you off and, they would still brush you and then, hit you in certain ways. And then when I went to D.C., one guy literally...
But is that life in the big city? Is that just life in the big city, or is that because you're a TI? What do you think?
It's because you're a TI. One guy, when I was in D.C., I was at a club, and he literally pushed me with his palm, pushed me, and his girlfriend had to step, or wife or whoever it was, had to step in between us because, at that point I was, you get to a point where you're so fed up where it's like, okay, you hit me first, it's on. So, that had happened. So from my perspective, I really, that was probably one of the more extreme episodes. But for the most part, they cut you off and they swarm. But I have to say, like, in, 20% of the cases, they might bump up against you. But for the most part, I think that if you just let people know, I mean, you just, don't.
But I mean, bumping up against, like, leaning and crowding and just kind of letting you know they're there, but. Yeah.
And you can observe. I mean, when the rest of the place is empty, and then there are 20 people around you, it's like there's a problem.
But one of the things you said, I'm never hung around gay clubs, but you said that it seems more there are a larger percentage of perps perhaps in the gay community, or that sort of thing happens in clubs, or I don't know. I didn't quite get a take on.
No, what I'm saying is that my point is what I've observed, and this, again, goes back to as the disclaimer because this is being recorded. Like, if I was in a personal conversation, I'd be like, yeah, it seems like more gay people. But logically, there are going to be more gay people because that's my demographic. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, from my perspective, the same group that's been harassing you and the same network, especially if it's not, you got to realize there are different, when you're talking about a TI, you're talking different networks. You're talking someone, in many cases, has, incited a smear campaign. And what does a smear campaign do? It covers every facet of your life. Whether you're at work, that demographic is different than your family, than your social. So, different groups are going to be incited for different purposes, that all use similar tactics. So, from my perspective, the reason why I say, it seemed like that there were more gay people was just all the friends that I'd had over the years. I remember just calling up, and they just totally immediately said, the little catchphrase within 1 minute, I think you need a psychiatrist. And I would from people where they would normally not say that.
Is that because you brought that up and you mentioned what was happening? Why did they say that? They just came out and said it for...
I'm going to tell you for like probably 3 people. I remember one guy, I didn't even tell him what was going on. And the only topic of the conversation was about, like, he brought up short sale mortgages or whatever, and he was talking about my short sale. And then he just started talking about psychiatry out of the blue and stuff like that. And I was like, this is not even anything he's ever discussed with me. And then another guy called up.
So, like, somebody, you can assume that somebody has clued him in as you were about to see him, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, he was someone that I spoke with on the phone. But then there were other times where, there was someone that I dated. We hadn't spoken in like maybe a year and a half, and I called him up, and after like just making one statement, like, gosh, some crazy crap is happening to me. It's like I'm getting harassed, publicly, and that's the only thing I say, and then all of a sudden, it's like in a very terse, monotone. They're like, "Have you thought about?" No, not even have you thought about. Have you seen a psychiatrist? And it's just a phrase that normally most people would just say that one more time.
Yeah, coming back again. You're breaking up terribly there for all. Are you back over with me?
Yeah, I'm on a regular phone.
There?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You were fading in and out, though.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know what that was? I hit the microwave. I bet the microwave had something to do with it. Anyway, one of the things we talked about was the crime in New York City under Koch, and it seems to maybe have improved under when Giuliani came in, and you maybe equated that to. Well, what do you have to say on that topic? Well, as in relation to gang stalking.
Well, the point that I was making, and since you're recording it, I'm not going to talk about the other metaphors that I was using, but just quite simply, this is probably a part of a civilian network of citizens who are empowered to, like, protect the country from a terror perspective, from a community-based perspective, even from, like, there are actually child molesters out there. So it's one of those things where, you know, in my case, this is why I don't think that everybody is doing it selfishly or out of cruelty. Some people really equate pedophilia to homosexuality. They think they can't. They think it's the same thing. It's an abomination, and you know that's the only way they can think of it. So it, you know, from their perspective, they think they're doing the right thing.
Okay,
So,
but getting back to the crime in New York City, and did it improve? In other words, with less crime because of potentially because of
civilian networks, but not so much specifically in terms of the psychological harassment tactics. But I think that as far as the actual networks of individuals, in terms of, you know, technically, I guess it's, you know, a lot of the times they call them snitch networks, where, you know, a lot of the times they, you know, help to find, you know, mobsters and crime lords and drug lords and things of that nature.
Sure.
The problem is, the point that I was making and bringing up all the other metaphors was, you know, anything when a state becomes, and history shows this, when it becomes too people policed, like meaning too citizen policed, what happens is you have basically too many chiefs, you know, who should be Indians, and what happens is you have abuses of, you know, the privilege of what they do. So what happens is, you know, there's a code of honor, just like policemen. You know, like policemen, you have some people who get out of line who, you know, whether they're stressed or whether they're racist or whether they're just having a bad day, you know, they beat the hell out of somebody. And it's like, you know, if that person's black, it's like, oh, hell, you know, you just abuse your power, you know. But then a lot of the times there's a code where, okay, you know what, we're just going to look at this as an isolated incident, and, you know, if nobody's recorded it, we're going to forget that it happened, and we're going to turn the other way.
Okay, and I mean, it's a big picture question, and maybe I shouldn't be asking him, but I am going to try one more time, and that is, do you think this, whatever you want to call it, gang stalking, community policing, what have you, has it done anything to reduce crime in the big city of New York, or no? What do you think? What's your guess? You've lived there.
There's a difference. There's a difference between what you would term as gang stalking, using direct psychological tactics, as opposed to having a civilian spy network that basically is an informant network. There's a difference. Like, you can have informants who infiltrate, you know, a particular drug community, or infiltrate, you know, a hate group or anything like that, and they can still be as effective, you know, basically snuffing out people who need to be taken out or whatever. But the psychological tactics, generally speaking, are going to happen from a retaliatory or revenge or, you know, we don't like your kind perspective. So, you know, it's great when it comes to people who've gotten off, you know, of charges, and you know for sure that happened in terms of, okay, they truly were guilty and they got off. But the problem is, and this is why vigilantism is, you know, never good. You know, extrajudicial anything is never really good, because as a system, because it's one of those things where, yeah, we see the movies where, you know, the person gets away with murder and doesn't go to jail, and then, you know, the protagonist of the film kills the killer. But what happens is, when things are propagated, lies and things of that nature, you have those honest civilians, you have those honest people within that network, just like we talk about cops, where it's like, as a cop, I expect you to uphold a certain level of behavior. It's the same thing, where if someone says that's a bad person, he's a rapist or a child molester, the code, as a civilian, as a part of this network, is going to honor that statement as being true. But what happens is, you have a number of people who infiltrate these networks that basically corrupt them, that make them viral, or you have people who take these tactics from
infiltrate the networks of,
or they use it for their own little mobbing group, and or you have literally crime racketeering groups who basically, like, discredit a witness, you know, by using these tactics, or doing, you know, having a smear campaign to basically incite something. So,
okay, and on this topic, you made a comment one time, and I didn't sleep that night thinking about this, but you made the comment, and I want to make sure I quote you right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that perping is a whole new criminal racketeering culture.
Yeah, and when I say criminal racketeering, the reason why I say it is criminal racketeering is because you have the network that you're talking about, the guy at the grocery store. You're talking about the guy at the bank, your teller. You're talking about the bus driver, the cab driver, the cable company guy. You're talking about people who have access to sensitive information, who have access to homes, and they basically, act in unison. And when it's done from an organized crime perspective, it's never good. So, and it goes back to
But we hear so many stories.
Like for me,
I kind of believe with what you're saying, because we've heard so many stories about people who were singled out by organized crime or for speaking out or for revenge, that it is.
Yeah, and keep in mind, criminal racketeering is not, you have criminal racketeering, and then, of course, you have criminal racketeering with money laundering. And that would be in the instance of if someone targeted me heavily because they felt like, okay, well, if we get him to commit suicide or if we kill him, we get insurance. That's insurance fraud. So that would classify as money laundering or mortgage fraud or whatever you want to call it. But, criminal racketeering and organized crime pretty much are synonymous, in the sense that you have legitimate people that work within legal constraints of committing crime from an organizational perspective. So yeah, I believe that the majority of these networks, it's criminal racketeering oriented. But like, for example, if I were to say, when I look at my network of gay people harassing me, a lot of that could be personal. You have a culture that's created in which, you have to develop a certain sense of apathy. And I can't do it. I'm extremely empathetic, even to like the perps who are trying to harm me. Like, I still think back to this one person that I actually dated, and I'm just like, gosh, they really, literally, they are contributing to my demise, and I still somewhat felt sorry for them in their own situation. So I still, no matter what they did to me, I still felt empathy.
Has anybody ever tried to recruit you to join the dark side and to become a perp?
Not truly understanding the origins of all the folks that are harassing me, I would have to say, not that I know of, but I've had people do things like come to me, offer me drugs, or I've had people offer me the bad things of life that are somewhat addicting. And I just, outside of, food and sex, I'm not really one to get addicted to a lot of, substances.
Okay, and I'm jumping around here, and people are going to be listening to this interview 100 years from now, and they're going to say, man, that Vancouver, he gets off on some tangents. But you did make a comment one time that you thought about Scientology, and you were really considering it, and about their fair game actions, which is very similar to GangStalking. What do you think?
Yeah, and I've read about that. The thing is, Scientology is, it's demonized in the media, and I got to just tell you, I still am not against Scientology, even though I know there are stories out there. And the reason why I say that is because being someone who's been demonized.
So you don't believe the fair game stories? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no. I believe that that may have happened, but is that true of the organization in the sense, in the capacity in which it was taken out? Because you got to keep in mind that some people would look at the terror network and say, we need informants. We need to know people who will keep the community safe. So I'm not saying that fair game in itself is wrong, but I'm just saying,
You're not saying fair game is not wrong? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying it's right or wrong, because, and let me just preface it by saying I've not read enough about fair game and the actual things that Hubbard himself said, but I haven't read enough to know, like, what the actual doctrine is relative to fair game.
Okay.
My understanding is that, if you can make it through what we put you through, then good. You're worthy enough to be a part of our group. That's my understanding of it, or something like that. But that philosophy is done with, secret societies, frats, sororities, things of that nature. So for those of us who don't become a part of a lot of groups, chances are we're going to get targeted just due to the sheer numbers of perps and people participating that I've observed.
Huh. And I had a couple of 3 other bullets here. You said recently, in fact, that some websites had been blanked out for you, that you couldn't visit them. Is that sort of thing? How long has it been going on? And does that sort of thing happen with you very much?
Well, I'm going to tell you that, I mean, it happened heavily when I first realized that I was getting, when the overt harassment started and I was getting
7-8 months ago.
Yeah, I was getting locked out of email accounts and everything was happening. But it seemed like they eased up on a lot of different tactics in regards to work. And so yeah, the other day when I couldn't get to a website, I was kind of like really upset. I mean, it literally took me through, I was trying it over and over again, but then the next day or 2 days later or something like that, I went onto the site and it was fine. But now I still get emails where, like, for example, today someone called me up asking.
That could have just been the website down. I mean, but
no,
but...
it wasn't. The website was up. The website was up, and it just would not let me. It would not let me apply. So I mean, that was distinct. I mean, because I've applied to a number of different jobs, and the website was not down at all. It would come
now, when you say you've applied to a number of jobs, one of the things that we hear often enough to make it not be a coincidence around here in the TI landscape is that TIs, some of them are not allowed to work. That there's somebody pays a little visit to the potential. What do you think about that?
I think that a couple of things are going on. It depends on if what's going on is extrajudicial in the sense of legitimate terror concerns in terms of a suspect and maybe someone misusing the list of individuals that, have to be blacklisted or anything like that. Or you have a situation in which, like, you have someone who's just like, I'm going to go ahead and personally, I'm going to make sure you never work again because you pissed me off. And then they work through, these rogue groups to basically spread disinformation. Like, for example, someone emailed me today and they asked for my information. I'm not saying that this person was dishonest, but a number of signs that I kind of looked at that made it a little bit sketchy was, she sent me a template from her company that is normally filled out, and I noticed that the formatting was slightly off, which if it's a standard template, generally formatting is precise. And then the second thing that happened was the company she was representing, and it could have been the company that contacted her in reference to my skill set, and that company that I looked up, the certificate on the website was invalid. And then when I looked at what it was GoDaddy.com, which is not, I'm not downgrading them, but I'm just saying from the skill set that they were looking for, it's usually with companies that are very large that a lot of the times host their own systems as opposed to going to GoDaddy. So, in that instance, a lot of the times, to keep this thing basically, quote-unquote, legal, I think they have to throw in a lot of decoys. That's very, very important. So, for example, I went to the gym, and, I haven't spoken with my brother, my family in a while. And in particular, my brother and I had the most conflict because of, my initially thinking that he was behind everything. But my brother showed up, and this has happened almost.
Was your brother aware of it? What's going on with you? Is it happening to him, or?
You know what? I haven't really discussed it with them just because of some of the things that were done and said. Because, it's, I don't know what they're facing, and I don't know the situation. Like, just to give you an example, someone at work slipped and said the date, the 21st, was my last day at work when I was told that it was the 31st. And then I was in the chat room today, and someone mentioned, in 3 weeks, he'll only get an hour, out to shower and work out. And I'm just kind of like, okay, does this mean I'm getting
You mean in the chat room here on TalkShoe.com somewhere?
No, this is in another chat room. Like,
somewhere else, okay.
Yeah, like now when I get on chat or when I go anywhere on the internet, like if I'm chatting, perps follow. And just to give you an example,
sure.
Like not going to be too graphic, but I went to the bathroom and the alarm went off. And so anyway, I had to rush out of the bathroom just to cut the alarm off. And I don't even have a formal
What kind of an alarm are you talking about that went off?
It was one that never goes off.
Like a fire alarm or in your house? Or?
I have in my master bedroom, I have an alarm system. and that's tied to the rest of the house. But for some reason, the pad in my master bedroom just started going off randomly.
Oh, so like somebody might have been trying to break in, or
No, I mean, I have no idea what was going on, but I knew both my doors were locked and they didn't have the ability. I have kickstands at the door, so I knew that no one was downstairs. But it was just a matter of trying to, I just hit a key and it stopped. I mean, my system.
One thing I wanted to
active. It wasn't
pursue
active.
a little bit was this, because we get a lot of it here, perping in the chat rooms here on at TalkShoe, that they somehow have the ability to follow you. And you're saying that you've had that happen out on the internet on other chat rooms. Is that right?
Well, no, it's very easy, because what happens is, like, when I got back on the bed, like I did the cut off the alarm by just hitting a key, because I was like, I don't even know how to turn it off because it wasn't set. And so anyway, I get back on the computer and I get back in chat, and I notice the person said, he takes a crap and not using the terminology that he used. He took a crap and didn't wash his hands, and I was like, damn. And and it was one of those things where I was like, well, damn, yeah, the thing went off and I forgot totally. So, those things, and there are several times where someone is, I've gone from my desk where I actually work during the day, to get on my bed. It's actually in the same space. And someone commented, oh, he's laying on the bed now, basically letting me know that they are, have some
surveillance, in-home surveillance, and they're letting you know that they have that in the chat room. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So a lot of the times when they follow me, a lot of the times if you're on Yahoo, they have your names buddy listed. And then a lot of the times they just see you go to the computer, they know your habits. I mean, when I don't put it beyond perps to do any and everything they need to do, because that's what a stalker does. They take pleasure in knowing your habits and demonizing any and everything you do. I mean, literally, if you isolate someone, after a while, they're going to talk to themselves. They're going to do things that are quirky. They're like me. I look quirky. I do quirky things in terms of my head when I'm touching my head, or when you're that way, you can use surveillance in any context to demonize someone. So, they see you nude. I see comments, about my being nude or something like that in the chats. I mean, my genitalia, everything. So It's one of those things where, the people, they don't have any sense of restraint when it comes to what they say. I mean, I've been called the N-word in chats. I've been called the F-word. I mean, so it's one of those things where they have absolute power, because you would think that chat is monitored by, even if this is a rogue group of individuals, you would think that it would still be monitored by some handler or someone that would actually say, that's inappropriate, and that would classify as like hate speech. And technically, I could take that and, okay, we see that's harassment. So, in that instance, I mean, they've gotten to a point where I think, which is kind of why I was a little bit worried when they said the comment about, 3 weeks, that correlated to the date that slipped out at my company, like, he'll be in, he'll have an hour each day, to shower and work out. I don't put it past anything now, because with the magnitude of financial institutions, work institutions being involved, my car was even wired. My car is even wired for remote access. So that means my car has alarm goes off whenever it wants to go off. My doors are locked whenever they want to unlock them and lock them. My heat, air conditioning, all of that. Totally, they can control every part of it. They can move my seat back and forth while I'm in it. So, I mean, they have all this access, and then, if for some reason I have a surplus of money, they usually then vandalize it or do something where I have to, like, replace a battery, or they flatten the tire or something like that. So, I mean,
hey, one of the things when we started out here, I believe before we went on the recording, you had made the comment that, in fact, I haven't seen you around or heard you around here on any of these talk shows for, I don't know, I wouldn't keep a track, but it seems like a couple, 3 weeks, but that you weren't getting anything out of it. But I noticed that one time you started the talk show.
Well, I didn't really say I got anything. I didn't get. No, I got
Sure.
I got a lot out of it from the sense that I was able to express some of my thoughts to actual people that at least understood it, whether they were a perp or TI. So it's, because really, if you're a perp or TI, you live in a world that it's your network and that's it. And so as a target, a lot of the times if you're isolated, for me, that was good, quote unquote, therapy for me to some degree.
To become unisolated and to get on these talk shows and talk to people.
Yeah, the reason why I stopped attending was I started to feel that there was a sense of strictly I'm reporting the results almost like an experience. Because honestly, to some degree, I haven't figured out what all is going on with me, and I think that when you're a target, there are different offshoots. So if you start off, like, let's say, for example, it's just an experiment, and other people know that you're a target, or if you're isolated and they see that, oh, he never hangs around anyone, you might become a target, then, you have different, like maybe either a snowballing effect or, offshoots of the original reason why you were, quote-unquote, targeted. But from my perspective, if it's a social experiment or something like that, or if I'm listed as a potential person who might go crazy because I'm alone a lot or something like that, in those instances, it's really, it's hard to kind of like say what the
But anyway, you actually, I noticed that one night you actually started a show up, and were you just experimenting? Are you going to do a talk show here? This is your chance to get it out to the world, to let the world know what's going on. Are you going to do it one day maybe, or you can do it better, or?
No, what I was doing, because the deal is I said I wanted to write a book, but what I was planning on doing was I wanted to somewhat see it through, to see what really is going on, because as of right now, life is so unstable to the degree where I'm like, okay, I'm not really sure what's going to happen from 1 week to the next now, as opposed to 1 month to the next. So when I just gone on TalkShoe to see how do I set this up or whatever, and while I was setting it up, I was like, I clicked something and it started it. And I was like, I'll just set it. And so anyway, because I started it right at, I think it was like 7 or 6, or I forgot what the time was. But I clicked off probably after about 2 minutes. And so anyway, I had
is it going to be something you're going to do, or you're going to think about it and put it on the back burner for a couple months?
Back burner for a couple months. I would probably say I'm not going to do TalkShoe. If anything, any energy that I have in terms of orchestration would be literally going to Congress people, Department of Justice, ACLU, and possibly finishing my book. Because right now, if they want to set me up, I don't know how elaborate all of this is. I have no idea. I don't know to what degree my family is involved. I don't know if it's, at this point, someone, and not that I believe this, but I'm just saying, someone could come down and say, you know what, you're an alien, or they're aliens, and this is an experiment with a human, or at this point, my belief system has been so destroyed by being under this guise, for so long, and I don't even think it's so much that, it's more so family participation. That was who I held near and dear to me, so when they participate, and it's obvious not... And
do you mind if I ask, in what way did the family participate?
Oh, gosh, in multiple ways. But basically, it's change of character, and it's change of, tactics and actions and things of that nature. So, for example, I confronted my brother, and, when I confronted my brother, I had also spoken with a coworker, and confronted a coworker about, someone possibly, in the office messing with my PC, because I come back and a message would display that something had been ejected improperly on my Mac. And then there was another person who started saying crazy stuff, just while I was sitting next to him. And one of the things I had expressed was what was going on with me personally with my family, just thinking, okay, he's a stranger. I really don't want to discuss this with people who might who know my family or know my sibling, to put them in a bad light. So a lot of the times I'm more comfortable with strangers as opposed to not. And so I confronted a sibling, and did that and then confronted my coworker, and within a week I was getting harassed overtly. So I felt like at that point my brother was probably a decoy, and the person, my coworker, was very active in what he was saying. So I felt like it might not be the corporation,
let me tell you,
it might just be the person.
I'm getting to about the 45-minute mark, and it's been great, and I really appreciate it. And I'm getting ready to end this off, and I'm just wondering is there any last thing that you want to say that maybe we didn't hit because I interrupted you, or that you wish you would have said, or is there any last thing you want to say before I push the end button?
Okay, am I going to die tomorrow? No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
The big thing that, for people, if they're listening to it, to keep in mind is that, and I go back to this, we have a legal system right now that facilitates a complete police state. And I'm not trying to be militant or radical, but pay attention to the Patriot Act and pay attention to the amount of federal and civilian partnerships that exist and the amount of informants that are paid on the local, state, and federal levels. And it's a huge amount of people that have, sensitive, privy to sensitive data. So I would just, if anybody's listening, I would just literally be concerned about, those things and how it could relate to you or somebody you know. So that was the only thing that I wanted people to keep in mind.
Anything else that you wanted to say before I push the end button?
That's basically it. That's it.
Okay. Jonathan, thanks for appearing with me. Once again, my name is Vancouver, and I appreciate the interview.